Okay, we'll go ahead and get started then. A 12-year-old boy breaks down in tears. He doesn't understand what's happening to him, what's going on in his head, and neither do his parents. They take him to a doctor and they sit him down. The doctor asks for one-on-one time with the boy, and in a few seconds, he's alone with him. And they sit, and they chat. And the doctor, he takes notes. And the boy thinks to himself, please help me. Eventually, the doctor has a diagnosis. The boy has a textbook case of obsessive-compulsive disorder, or as it's better known, OCD. OCD, contrary to popular belief, is not a small mental tic that makes sufferers occasionally do strange things, but rather is a serious condition that can and does drastically affect someone's life. Now, despite this, OCD is not a crippling misfortune, but rather is an opportunity to grow as a person, which, if taken, transforms OCD from a weakness into a strength. So, in this speech, we're going to talk about what it's like to have OCD, what the likely causes of OCD are, and how understanding the condition allows someone to take it and turn it from a weakness into a strength. So, let's start with first things first and talk about what it's actually like to have OCD. Most of the time, when people think about OCD, they think of an adult nervously organizing all of their canned goods and turning the labels to face the front. And most of the time, we laugh at this sort of situation because, let's face it, it's pretty funny. A sitcom that was actually very popular with my friends portrayed an OCD detective who actually placed a live grenade in the egg carton of a refrigerator before gently closing it rather than just throwing it in haphazardly because of his OCD. See, to the average Joe, that's what the condition is. A strange but relatively harmless behavior pattern that is occasionally amusing. Beyond that is really not worth mentioning. The reality, though, is that something much bigger is behind that anxious arranging of cans and grenade placement. According to the Mayo Clinic, which apparently has nothing to do with mayonnaise, but rather is one of the world's premier medical research institutions, OCD can be split up into two parts: obsessions and compulsions. Let's talk about the obsessions. The Mayo Clinic describes them like this. OCD obsessions are repeated thoughts that are intrusive and cause distress or anxiety. Now, these obsessions often have themes to them, such as fear of contamination or dirt and needing things orderly and symmetrical. Up to this point, obsessions may seem pretty non-threatening. I mean, sure, silly, but definitely not dangerous. I want to draw your attention, though, to what the Mayo Clinic says before it lists these obsessions, namely that they cause anxiety. Now, it is critical to note that we are not talking about a temporary feeling of nervousness, but rather about a persistent fear that can consume every waking minute a person experiences. To the person with OCD, arranging those cans might be as critical as correctly performing brain surgery, because that's what it feels like. Imagine feeling like you were trying to perform brain surgery every second of every day. That's what it's like to have OCD, to have a mind that is overrun by nightmares. And it is unspeakably difficult to live like that. According to the Karolinska Institute, individuals with OCD are 10 times more likely than the average person to take their own life. 10 times. Suddenly the obsessions seem a whole lot less harmless. So, while OCD may look pretty non-threatening, the reality is that guy constantly organizing the sweeteners by the coffee maker at work might be in the grip of a truly paralyzing fear. And it's that fear that drives sufferers to perform compulsions, the second part of OCD. What's a compulsion? Well, the Mayo Clinic talks about them like this. OCD compulsions are repeated behaviors that you feel driven to perform. These repeated behaviors are meant to reduce anxiety related to your obsessions. However, engaging in the repeated behaviors brings no pleasure and may offer only a temporary relief from anxiety. A compulsion is something like organizing canned goods or constantly washing your hands. Not hugging your family, that, to many people's surprise, is actually a compulsion. The idea is that if you perform the compulsion, you'll somehow, some way relieve the anxiety that's gnawing at you. These compulsions quickly destroy the afflicted person's ability to be in a social setting, have a relationship, or hold a job. I mean, let's be honest. No one really wants to be around someone who is constantly spraying Lysol on things, or give them a job, for that matter. So, how do you even get to that point? How do you get OCD? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this second part of the speech, the likely causes of OCD. Now, the good news is that it is not contagious, as far as we know, because we're not actually 100% sure what causes OCD, but we do know this. The presence of OCD in the brain is most likely linked in some way to serotonin levels. Medical News Today reports that serotonin is a chemical neurotransmitter, meaning basically that it's responsible for relaying thoughts around your brain. There also seems to be a link between serotonin and feeling good. The more serotonin you have, the better able your brain is to think feel-good thoughts. So what's all of this got to do with OCD? Well, Calm Clinic notes that people with OCD tend to have low serotonin levels. So it's as if people with OCD are basically unable to think positively. In a normal brain, somebody thinks, wait, did I check to see if the oven is off? And when the brain searches through its memories and finds the answer is yes, they get a rush of good feelings from the serotonin and go on with their life. In the OCD brain, that doesn't happen. So the brain keeps checking and checking and checking and checking. That would be the obsessions, hoping to get that good feeling rush that will tell it everything's okay, but they don't. And so the sufferer takes actions. That would be the compulsions to try to trigger the good feeling rush. But because there's no serotonin, it doesn't really matter what they do. The compulsions don't relieve the anxiety, they just drive other people away. So up to this point, we've talked about some pretty bleak stuff. OCD is not just a quirky behavior pattern, but rather is a serious, painful, and as the suicide rate indicates, dangerous condition. Not only that, we're not even sure what causes it. But if you walk out of this room thinking only about the perils and pitfalls of OCD, then I have failed, pretty epically. Because this speech is about how OCD is a strength and not a weakness. And that's what we're going to talk about in this third and final point. And if anybody has a right to assert that it is a strength, it's me. Because that little boy that we talked about at the beginning of this speech, that was me. I understand the anxiety and obsession can cause because I lived with them for years. I understand how compulsions destroy your relationships because I watched mine deteriorate. And I understand thinking that death might be the best way out because I wondered that too. And I know that all of that can be overcome and used to serve God more effectively because with the help of a very smart man, my therapist, I did that too. And it all starts with understanding what the condition actually does. Cognitive behavioral therapy, the method I use to tackle OCD, revolves around teaching an individual to turn their thought patterns from something negative into something positive. So, instead of going, my family's going to die if I don't check the stove 4 times tonight, my brain goes, you know, everybody we know doesn't check the stove 4 times a night, and they're all fine. So I probably will be too. And with a lot of practice, you can teach yourself to ignore the thought after that. Because the thought isn't bothering you, you don't have to perform compulsions, which means you get to live your life just like everybody else. OCD only takes away your joy if you let it, and if you don't, not only can you live a full and happy life, you can use your gifts to show Christ to others. I use the experiences I had learning to control my own anxiety to help keep my friends calm when they're the ones who are under pressure. Basically, I get to be the hands and feet of Christ in a unique way that I would not have been able to if I hadn't had to battle OCD. That's something I wouldn't have missed for the world. So when you leave here today, I've just got one request. Remember what you have learned. Remember that OCD is a lot worse than we tend to make it sound, and those who suffer from it could really use your prayers. But most importantly, remember that that demon doesn't have to control their life. If you or someone you know might be struggling with OCD, recommend that they check out cognitive behavioral therapy. It helped me, and I know it can help them. And remember that when, not if, but when they defeat the demon, the lessons they will have learned can be used to make this world a better place. And really, if that is a weakness and not a strength, I have absolutely no idea what is. Thank you all so much for listening to me. It's been a pleasure.